Just a couple kind of housekeeping things. What was the injury to Grayson, and what, if any, procedure did he have?
Yeah, there's a little instability in his left ring finger. Dealt with it throughout the season. I think a lot of times guys do maintenance type stuff, routine stuff in the off season to kind of get ready. So it was good for him to kind of approach it in the off season. He'll be fine. Like, there's no kind of lasting effects of it, but just there was a little procedure to just stabilize the left ring finger.
Okay. Was that like incident based or something, or was it just something where just like?
At some point, yes. Like, yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what the incident was, but he dealt with it regular season, playoffs a little bit, but offhand, and just kind of took care of it. Minor.
George had said he'd have to address. I think he called it a tear between his 267. Has that occurred yet, or what's kind of the thought there with him handling that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's occurred. It's like those things you can deal in different ways. Sometimes they're operations, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's just rest, therapy. So it's being addressed.
Okay. Khris is in town. What's the latest on Khris? Just kind of where he is.
He's great. Yeah, I just saw him. He's been in here a ton. He's actually been in town most of the time. Looks great. Really starting to ramp up his court work and his lifting and everything. He's fine. Like, there's no lasting effects of the injury, and he's in a really great spot.
Is that all we have for injuries? I was trying to think if there's anybody else.
I guess back to George. Anything with the oblique that he had to have? That's a rest.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Okay.
Yeah, he's good.
You guys finished the season. I'm curious, just your first thoughts on the title defense. Obviously, it was unsuccessful, but what did you think of the guys' effort and kind of what you guys put together this season in trying to defend the title?
Yeah, I think, specific to the title defense, unsuccessful, specific to our goal of being in a position year in and year out, sustaining success over a long period of time. I think we've won more regular season games and playoff games than any team in the last 4 years. I think we have the second longest consecutive playoff streak in the NBA over the last 6 years. We were a third seed, 51 and 31, and I think we had a chance. I think we had a real chance to contend for a championship this year again. And so overall, coming off of, I think, the shortest offseason in the history of the NBA, literally, I think today we're about 11 months away still, right? Like, the other finals are, I think we're 11 months away from when we won. Could not be more proud of the guys for how we managed the regular season, competed in the playoffs. And credit to the team that won, Golden State. Credit to the Celtics for getting there. You got to be lucky. You got to be good. You got to be healthy. I think if you ask those teams, they feel like they did a little bit of all of those things. And this year, I feel like we did less of those things than last year. But love our team, love our group, love where we're headed, and love the opportunity of what we have going forward.
I guess to go chronologically speaking, just what's your sense for Bobby and Pat in terms of what I know that it's their option, but also because of your options with them, you can kind of maybe extend past the cap. So just your overview on how that's going, or what you may think you'd be discussing with them, possibly coming back.
Yeah, I think those guys play into their free agency discussion. So we have a number of guys who are or can be free agents. Those guys have an option. Thanasis has an option. When those things settle themselves, and those are their decisions, they're not our decisions, we'll address those. Just generally in free agency, we have draft, you have free agency. There's a ton of planning and preparation that kind of goes into all of it. You can execute and communicate at different times throughout the steps of those processes. And so today we're heavily focused on the draft. For Thursday, making those kind of plans and preparations relative to trades and different things we can do. And then when we get through that and we approach, the opening of free agency, we'll be ready to adjust on those decisions when they happen.
To some other free agency questions. Wes mentioned to us that he would love to be back. Obviously, he's a free agent, no options or anything. I'm curious just what you thought of his performance this year, joining mid-season, and kind of what you think of his future in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think incredible. I mean, at the end of the day, we picked up Wes, I was sometime in December, kind of mid-season, let's call it, and he ended up starting for us in the playoffs and gave more to this team in terms of blood, sweat, and tears than anyone, and just an ultimate competitor, an ultimate teammate, understands his role, understands how to maximize his role, was incredibly efficient and effective in what he did in guarding some of the best offensive players that our game has. And so love what he did, and I think if we have an opportunity to have him back, and I know that he's expressed that that's something he would like to do, I think hopefully we can figure something out when the time's right.
Same question with Javon.
Yeah, kind of the same answer. Later season pickup, but Really a great fit, unbelievable competitor. I think Javon found a little bit of his best self with us. I think he's built to really defend and make open shots and be a competitive kind of tough guy, pick up 94 feet, had a real impact for us, really helped us. And again, I think a guy that, when the time is right to have those discussions, I think hopefully he'd like to be back here. We'd like to try to figure out how to have him back. But really just to comment on what he did, picking him up late and how he just integrated with us in our style of play, our culture of our locker room was pretty impressive.
During your time as GM, you guys are kind of getting towards the back of the first round, the second round kind of draft. But kind of what have you sort of learned about that thought process of trying to get a young player that you can develop and also still trying to get players who can actually contribute?
So during my time as GM, I think we've made 2 first-round picks. So what have I learned about it? I think you want to maximize the value of the asset. That asset for us is in different ways, chopping it up in different ways, has become P.J. Tucker, has become Grayson Allen. Other draft picks becoming Nico Mirotic, Dante, who, relative to his draft, had a really big impact over his 3.5 years with us as an impact player. And I think that you can maximize the value of that asset relative to the need on your team in different ways. It could be trading it outright for something that can help you, attaching it for something that can help you, or drafting a player that's ready now and can grow with you. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't draft a player that can't really contribute now and really has a big time horizon and a big upside. That's something we'll always look at. But I think those other options in the past have been more attractive to us, and I think we've gotten great benefit out of it, and I think we'll continue to focus on those. And that's really what's going on right now this time of year, is you're just trying to generate as many of those options as you can to evaluate and hopefully make a good decision.
Sort of kind of applies to the draft pick and sort of that salary slot and free agency. There's a good chance you're operating in the tax this year, which would be 3 in a row. I know you and Mike have talked a lot about the flexibility and commitment from ownership, but that repeater tax is, that timeline's there. So are you under any sort of, I don't want to say mandate, but how heavy is that consideration maybe to either get under the tax this year or the next 2, or have you been kind of told when you look at that big board of salary, like that's just the nature of the business when you're trying to win championships?
I think it's expensive to compete, and it's even more expensive to win. And just look at the teams that do it year in and year out. And could not be more grateful or thankful for Mark and Wes and Jamie and Peter Fagan for the support and the resource they've given this team. And so going from non-tax to tax is an expensive term. Going from tax to repeater tax is an expensive term. But it's our job is to be as efficient and as intentional as possible with the dollars that we spend and get the best results. And, I think give or take, this or that year in and year out, we've been one of the best, most efficient spending teams in the NBA. You talk about third year in the tax. I can tell you this is our first year really operating in the luxury tax. The year before we were a non-tax team. We won a championship. We became a tax team. Had Boston won this year, I think they would have done a similar thing. Golden State is definitely in the tax. And so I think it's just our job to be efficient, be intentional, sell what we believe, and then ownership committing to really supporting us and resourcing us. And they've done that every single step of the way, and I think they're continue to be committed to that.
Last year you won, this year you lose. I'm curious, as you're thinking about the loss or not getting where you want to, is there something that sticks out to you about this team that we need some of this? Whether that, I'm not trying to say tell me what player you want, but just kind of what you're thinking about, man, this team could use a little bit more of blank.
Yeah, I think for sure. That's what you go through immediately as you lose. Every day afterwards, all the meetings we're having with coaches, conversations with players, studying your analytics, and you really try to determine where did we fall short. Not to take a crutch of we had an injury and if not that we would have won. That's to me like the easy way out. It's to really figure out how you have to get better, be in a position to win no matter what. And I think with this group, it feels like, playmaking, shot making. I think a little bit of a flavor of the month is wing size, big wing size. And I think we talk about all those things, but our identity we've been one of, if not the best defensive team in the NBA over the last 4 years. The regular season this year, we were above average, maybe not as elite as we were, but we played an entire season without Brook, and that matters. Offensively, we've been one of the best offensive teams. And so I think being great at both things actually matters. When you lose, theoretically, because you weren't good enough offensively, you react offensively. If you lose because you're not good enough defensively, you react defensively. I think our job is to stay balanced, stay in the pocket, understand that being great offensively and defensively, having players that fit around Giannis, that fit coach's system, is the most important. And so just being laser focused on that, drilling down in and figuring out what are the specific skill sets that will give us the returns we need in a tough playoff series. That the league keeps getting better. They're going to be better again next year. You saw what Phoenix did last year after losing in the regular season. Boston's going to come back on fire, and they're going to be great. Like, Miami's going to be great. Hopefully we're going to be great. Brooklyn could be healthy and be great. And so that's just to name a few. And so, I think it's really to react to the things that we weren't good enough at, but not overreact, because at the end of the day, you got to be balanced. You got to be great in both areas.
So I guess to follow up on that, so philosophically, I guess, do you still like that idea of that rim protector and having that guy at the rim when you kind of look at the way Boston attacked you, or you can even go to out west how the Jazz have been attacked, or even to a degree what Dallas did to Phoenix with their bigs. So is that kind of the balance of, okay, there's the wings and the 5 out of trying to get either that guy off the court, or so it sounds like you're still pretty good philosophically with where you guys are at, or is that part of the balance of looking ahead, even like whatever Brooks contract situation, you know what I mean, where it's kind of like do you try to find ways to be who you are, but add around and adjust with where maybe some other teams are going to try to beat what you do.
Yeah, I would say not adjust to where other. Well, yeah, of course you're always adjusting what other teams are doing, but at the core we need to be great defensively to win, and I think you do that by being versatile. So. Yeah, Brook is incredible at the rim. Brook has other skills. We have a defensive philosophy which we're really good when he plays. But we've also won a number of times throughout the last few years doing things differently, and even more so recently. So I think you have to have players that are good in the switch game. You have to have guys that are good in a hedge game or a trap game. You have to have guys in a drop game. And so I think creating versatility on your roster offensively and defensively around the fact that we have the best player in the world in Giannis, we have a great core that supports him, I think gives you the chance to be top offensively and defensively. I don't think you can be a top 5 defense in our league anymore throughout the regular season unless you can play in different ways. I just think the game has changed too much, and so we won't be there unless we can be versatile, and so we got to continue to push that envelope.
You mentioned playmaking, shot making. Do you feel like at some point you guys lost the balance of what we need around Giannis as shooters? Like that's the thing. That's the only thing that matters. Like, do you feel like at some point it went too far that way, and it's been a process of working a little bit more of that? Jrue's obviously a big part of that.
I don't know. We'll find out. Like, our team, we're one of the best shooting teams in the NBA, and we're even better shooting when Khris plays. Khris has had career high in assists per game the last 2 years. He's a 25-5 guy, like one of the few guys in the NBA that can do that. It's not a crutch. But when you lose one of your best playmakers, who also is one of your best shot makers, I think career high in 3-point makes per game this season, it makes you reassess. But I think if you end up saying, if you have Khris, Giannis, and Jrue, do we win or not? I don't know. Does Grayson shoot a little better? Does Bobby shoot a little better? When people are more in their spots? I'd say absolutely, because you play the entire season a certain way and you get accustomed to things that you do. And when you're kind of pushed out of your comfort zone in a big moment, it has an impact. And so when I say shot making and shot creation on our team, part of it is internal development. Those guys now feel that, like they have to get better, we have to get better. Part of that is adding players to our team, but I don't think anything will ever supersede shot making. Because at the end of the day, Giannis is the best player in the world, and putting space and shot makers around him matters. And then you go to Khris and Jrue, and those guys are very good in the one-on-one game, so putting space and shooting around them matters. And so I'm convinced more than ever that you got to have shot makers, and so don't be surprised if we continue to go find guys that can make shots.
With Brook, he's mentioned this is the best I've found in years. I'm curious, as he's come out of the season, just what you've heard from him, how he felt about it, and I guess how you guys felt internally about getting him back on the floor and what he did in the postseason.
Miraculously, I thought it was almost an immediate impact. I mean, credit to Troy Flanagan, his group, a huge credit to Brook and the work that he put in to go through the injury and the operation and the rehab that he went through throughout the course of the season and hit the ground running the way he did was amazing. He does feel great. He does look great. He tests great. So from a health perspective, he's doing unbelievable. Something crazy I thought I read, I think his last, he played 10 or 12 games, his rim protection and opponents' attempts and opponents' effectiveness at the rim, I know it was a small sample, was like lower and better than it's ever been. And so like he literally had more impact in the last 12 games defensively than he's had in the last 4 years when he's arguably been one of the best defensive bigs in the NBA. So I think Brook's in a great spot. We love Brook. I think he had a huge impact in the playoffs, and Chicago series in particular, I think was borderline dominant. And so, yeah, I think in a weird way, like the time off, maybe he's kind of rejuvenated him a little bit. Maybe he's got a little more, juice in the legs. But we feel great about him. Guys love him. He loves it here. And I think he continues to have a huge impact in how we play.
Maybe at the time, at the trade deadline, you weren't sure where Brook would be. As you look back now at the move that you did make in season, obviously we know Serge just didn't have a role as it went on. How do you kind of self-evaluate that transaction in terms of either what you thought you may need or maybe it's just changed because Brook came back? How would you sort of look back at that move and how it played out?
I would say how it played out all the way to the end of the playoffs without any background context and behind-the-scenes knowledge that you'll never get. We were down a wing and we were plus a big. So we traded a wing for a big, so it's probably not great, right? When it happened, we absolutely needed Serge to come in and bridge the gap. So beyond the insurance part of Brook, we needed immediate help and someone to come in. Like that's where we felt we were at that point in the season. And Serge did a great job. I mean, Serge really came in and helped bridge that gap for us in a big way. Beyond that, he was an incredible professional. He's a very good player that was ready. And he was ready for every game in the playoffs. He was ready for every game in the regular season that he was with us. And so Serge himself, I thought, was a great add. The need itself didn't become as big as it could have, or that we were worried that it could have. And so that's why we got the insurance on him. And at the end of the day, we traded Dante, who would have been a restricted free agent, for some future assets that I think we'll be able to use and hopefully repurpose and do something that can continue to help this team going forward. But obviously how it played out, being down a wing and up a big, not the greatest, but totally convinced and convicted in why we did it, how we did it, and actually really happy with the outcome. And I think it got us to the position we were.
A couple Greek journalists have talked about Giannis playing this summer with his international team. I'm curious, what does that process look like for you, whether it's Giannis or Jordan or whoever is playing internationally, kind of the conversations you guys have to figure out, hey, we're trying to get some management for you, make sure you're rested and healthy, but we know this means something to you.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the answer. I mean, whether it's Jordan or Khris or Jrue or Pat or Brook, Giannis, Thanasis, we've had a lot of guys over the years play for the national team, which is a credit to the people on our team. It's an incredible honor for those guys. We know what it means to them. I think it's great for us. It's really reflective on the type of players that we have. I think they're big decisions. Not only decisions big, but how you manage it and how you operate is big. And so we continue to have those conversations. We figure out the best path forward, how to support, how to make the decision. We haven't done a lot of that yet. We're pretty focused on free agency and draft. But at the right time, we'll all sit together collectively and we'll figure out not only the right decision, the great decision, but also how we kind of resource it and support it. And I think we do that as well as anybody in the NBA. I think we have a lot of opportunities to help these guys.
Jon, do you have a specific top priority scheduled for this offseason, something you assuredly want to make sure gets done in the next number of weeks, or is it all just kind of the same?
Manage the draft on Thursday and be ready for free agency when it opens up. No, but top priority, it's general, but it's true. Our job is to continue to kind of, I said this, generate options and evaluate them to try to get better. All the things I said earlier is true, and I believe we've built a team that's been really successful over the last few years, and we've had a chance each year in my mind to win a championship, and we won one once, right? So that's a pretty good outcome. But our goal is to keep pushing the envelope, figure out how to get better, believe in our core, grow and develop internally, from a coaching perspective, from a front office perspective, and continue to look for ways to get better with the group that we have. but figure out options to get better and improve the group. And so my priority is to just, as soon as I leave here, to go back up in the conference room or to keep pushing the guys. It's like figure out how we can get better. What are the options? What are the things that we can do? What are the things no one else is thinking about? And so that's the goal, is to keep doing that. And hopefully by the time we open up for the 22-23 season, we'll feel like we got better.
I know we all get older by the day, but I'm curious, when you take a look at this roster, do you worry about that core and the age of that core? We're in the prime of your big three, but nearing, I'm not going to say the end, there's probably plenty of years left, but getting closer and closer. Is that something that you guys think about and try to think through?
So thinking about the future, yes, of course, that's a big part of our job. Like, how do we extend the window? How do we create a new window at the end of it? Those are the things that we got to think about, constantly turning and evaluating, generating different things that can do that. Worried about like nearing the end or the age, like no way. Like at the end, and I don't know, it'd be a question for you, but how old is Steph Curry? How old is Klay Thompson? How old is Draymond Green? And they just won an NBA championship. And so age is on our side, in my opinion, with where we're at. Giannis entering his prime, Khris and Jrue in the middle of their prime, Brook on the back end of his prime, but still playing at a prime level, the impact of us. And going down to the other guys that have been part of who we are so far, I just think I think we're really kind of just in the middle of where we could be, maybe approaching the middle. I'm definitely not on the back end.
You kind of see some lessons. You mentioned some of that having surges kind of bridging the gap. Is some of that just kind of thinking of what kind of load you want to put on Giannis during a season, not necessarily making him go back up big even though he can't do it? Is that some of the lessons, kind of things that you learned throughout the season and how that affected him, making sure that he's still fresh when it comes down for the playoffs?
I think he may have had the most dominant playoff performance in the history of any player in the NBA. So whatever we did last year, we'll try to do it again. I think Bud is a magician. Troy Flanagan and his group are unbelievable. Giannis knows his body better than anyone. I think coming off of what has been, again, if you win the most regular season and playoff games over a 4-year period, that means you play the most, right? More than likely. And so these guys have had an incredible load on them. That's not an excuse. It's a fact. And I think Khris didn't get injured because he was tired. He slipped on a wet spot on the floor. And, Jrue played more and had a higher usage than he's ever had in his playoff. And he was pretty dang good and pretty dang impactful. And so I feel really good about like what we're doing. I think we have the best medical group, performance group in the world. Bud has an unbelievable feel with it. We study it. We have great support from our ownership. We talk about it. We have great nutrition. We have great athletes who care about their bodies. And so I'm very happy and confident with what we do in that area.
We all go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I mean, you mentioned coaching. A quick thought on Darvin. It seems like he's been knocking on the door for a while. And then also, is there a plan to replace the person? I know Charles was promoted, but to replace the person on staff. Is there any kind of update there with Mike?
Yeah, I mean, relative to Darvin, unbelievable. Like, big smile on my face. Like, could not be happier for Darvin, for D, for the family. Not only to become a head coach in the NBA, but for a storied franchise like the Los Angeles Lakers, to have the great talent he has around him with LeBron and AD. It's awesome. It's a credit to Bud, what he's been able to do with his staff. He's now got a tree of head coaches in the NBA that have had a ton of success. Darvin will be another one. The Lakers got an unbelievable get. In terms of coaches staff, Bud and I talk about it every day. We're working through it. It's an opportunity for us to figure out how to get better, how to grow and develop internally, explore things externally. And so we'll do all those things. There's no rush. But we'll miss Darvin, there's no doubt. I mean, there's a reason he's head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's pretty dang good. So, but as much as we miss him, we're way more happy that he gets this opportunity and he deserves it, beyond deserves it.
We all know how passionate Bud is about his coaching room. Like, that is his room. So I'm curious what, if any input is it like, hey, maybe we think about this, or you've had these guys around for, like, what is that process like? Because I do know obviously how passionate it is and how strongly he feels about the people that should be in that room.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because it's really evolved over time. I'll say this publicly, like hiring him, one of the things that we talked about is I don't know assistant coaches, right? Like, I don't want you building my staff. I'm not going to build your staff, but I believe in you and I'm going to support you. And part of that is figuring out, salary structures and figuring out what we can do in terms of spots and all the different things. And that's really the foundation of where we've started, and where that's evolved to is, our staff is a staff. Like my front office, his coaching staff, me, we work on everything together. You know, we meet every day after games. Coaches are part of our free agent meetings. They're part of our trade meetings, any discussions, any planning that we're doing, talking about talent and value and stuff. We really do it together. And so that's evolved into an open conversation really between Bud and I and trying to figure out how do we get better. At the end of the day, I'm going to defer to him. Like, what do you want to do? I'm going to trust you. And he's going to do the same thing on our side. But it's a really good collaborative discussion. And I think we've had change in our coaching staff almost every year. And we've brought in outside people almost every year. And I think our staff just keeps getting better. And I think we'll do that again. Anything else? Thanks everybody for an unbelievable season. I know we don't really say it enough, but you guys have been beyond supportive. You know, Eric, work with you a ton. Jim, ton with you. You guys have been unbelievable. And so thank you for all you do. And here we go, 22-23 around the corner. Thanks.